Shalom, sir. How are you?
Shalom, shalom.
Man, I'm telling you, bro. I'm telling you, dude. Like, I I need my Mac, but this thing being on my iPad, man, it's been cool, but it's definitely an adjustment. I'm gonna be honest with you, it's definitely an adjustment for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Looks like
But
it took
anyway,
a lot of troubleshooting to get it right.
but you know, though, that's my fault though, because I should have had this already set up, but the Father forgive me. He's a merciful Father, so He'll forgive me.
You know it. You know
All right. Well, hey, you said we live. All right. Cool. Cool.
it.
Man, oh man. So I am excited about what we got going on. In the prophetic world, biblical prophetic world, not the YouTube prophetic world.
Right.
Uh, but things are actually unfolding before our eyes. And if you pay attention, and you're gonna always hear me say, you know, keep an eye on the Middle East, because the Middle East is always the key for what biblical prophecy talks about and
Mhm.
prepares us for. And the one thing I will say though, that the Truth Unedited video that you sent, and I saw, like I said, I saw the thumbnail and yesterday, and I didn't get a chance to watch it until you sent it to me.
Right.
And my sister and I, we had a good dialogue about that. And if you don't know who Truth Unedited is, I highly recommend you go and check that brother's page out on YouTube. Very knowledgeable, man of the Most High, and highly respected. I mean, some people, of course, just like he was saying, once you understand biblical history and understand the truth behind the text, modern day church will come against you because they will want to call you a hypocrite or uh, blasphemy or whatever titles that they want to give people that are discovering who the Father really is and how to truly follow Him. You know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But man, how's your week, man? How's your week so far going? Or
No,
when?
no complaints, man. You always take it one day at a time, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to. You have to. There's too many distractions out here in the world. You know, listening to the media, even in your personal life, there's distractions. That can cause you to go left or go to the left a little bit and get taken off the path mentally
Mm-hmm.
and spiritually.
Yeah.
So we just have to be aware of the tricks and the traps and snares of the enemy. That his goal is to distract us from our purpose and what the vision is of the Father for us and for His
Mm-hmm.
people.
I agree. I agree. We got to get together too, man. We got so much content we got to post, man. I have not had a chance to do that. And
Mhm.
by the way, anyone out there in the kingdom that is looking to partner with a ministry to handle social media posts or help us out, we would love to talk with you. Just send us a message via Facebook or shoot us an email at founders@kdhministries.org. We definitely need some folks to come in and help us out and get our content out there. But um, I want to get into one of the most prominent prophets of the Bible. I mean, they all are highly recognizable in their roles, but this specific prophet, he he has always caught my eye, and I've been very intrigued by his visions and his writings and his experiences, and not to take away from Ezekiel or Jeremiah or Isaiah, because all those fellow prophets. And it is interesting because minus Isaiah, but Jeremiah and Daniel and Ezekiel's writings were all literally behind one another. So they were alive, around that same time. But with the prophet Daniel, and what gets me is this too: in the Eastern world, well, mainly the Middle Eastern world, some people, some people don't look at him as a prophet. Some people just look at his writings as more of apocalyptic, apocalyptical type of writings.
Hmm.
But you heard even in his own words from Messiah, he quoted the prophet Daniel. So instead of what some of the, I guess if they want to call themselves scholars or writers or whatever, in modern day today, versus what the King of Kings has said, I'm going with the King of Kings and say that he is a prophet because obviously
Absolutely.
he was very prophetic. But what we're going to do today, so with the book of Daniel, we're going to do it in two parts. We're going to focus on chapters 1 through 6 today, and then on next week we're going to finish it up with 7 through 12, and there's a reason behind that. Um, if you look at modern times today, you hear you hear a lot of prophetic things that were prophesied, especially with Daniel when it came to like King Nebuchadnezzar and that sort of thing. But if you look at what's taking place right now in Gaza, I find that very interesting. Um, if you also look at with, I mean, this, I think if you go prior back to 2017,
Hmm.
um, I think that's a good start to really understand how prophetic end times from the time of the the move or the being recognized as the capital of the state of Israel in Jerusalem. That honestly to me fast forwarded the prophetic time clock, or actually confirmed of the things to come when it comes to the Antichrist, and
Absolutely.
how the world will be centered in that region more than anything. Some people say, is America part of the end times? I'll say this: America has been built off the Roman system, right? It's built off the 10 horns, which is horns reflect as power, and the 10 crowns, which meaning the kings of the earth, right?
Hmm.
And when you go back and look at U.S. history, it all aligned based on British rule and the Roman system. So they all go in hand in a sense. So even though when you read the scriptures, it primarily talks about the kingdoms in the eastern regions, um, but America does have something to do with it. We just don't know exactly what. But the more to come on that for sure.
Absolutely.
What's your thoughts?
Yeah, America takes on the traits
Hmm.
of Babylon. To me, it seems like America is a modern day Babylon, so to speak. They take on those characteristics of the Roman Empire.
Hmm.
A lot of the characteristics, everything you can think of, from paganism of the holidays and how how we know of everyone they've dealt with when it comes to biblical times.
Hmm.
They have influenced what the Father created into something totally opposite of what He wanted. It's been made into the gospel.
Hmm.
So everything from the Father's chosen people to what the Hamashiach looks like, what he stood for. It's so many different things that America has taken on the traits of those things. So, like you said, we don't know exactly the part America plays, but it's a role.
Hmm.
But you just gotta look at if you read the room on the characteristics of the country. Uh, it's somewhere intermingled. It's somewhere intermingled somewhere. It's just that I don't know if we're gonna have it all. We're gonna have all the nose, the ins and outs of it, but you can smell it in the air.
Hmm.
You know.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, chapter one is a very interesting chapter. It talks about the Hebrew boys,
Mm-hmm.
um, and how their role within Babylon and primarily what Nebuchadnezzar saw in them.
Mm-hmm.
And around this time, and the one thing about these books I like, these books have specific dates, right?
Yep.
It's dated when in the beginning, so it gives you an exact timeline idea of when this actually took place. It actually causes you to study to figure out, who dang man, I can't pronounce his name. Jehoiakim, the king of Judah at that time, and Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon came to Jerusalem, besieged it. So basically,
Mm-hmm.
um, in chapter one, verse one told you that Nebuchadnezzar came in their backyard and jumped their king, took their king, and went on by their business. Now I got your territory, type of thing.
Absolutely.
And the father saw, and again, if you go back and read the previous prophets and everything else, you saw that transition of Jerusalem being taken anyways because
Mm-hmm.
of disobedience.
Mm-hmm.
And so Nebuchadnezzar's got Nebuchadnezzar's leadership saw the Hebrew boys as a value add.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we know that? We know that because of their position, if you will, with the Father, meaning the favor that they have, the wisdom, the knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
the loyalty to leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And when they saw the wisdom in the Hebrew boys, they realized like, okay, something special about these guys.
Right.
And we I gotta be very careful with them, but they bring more value than these sorcerers, these false prophets, and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Their discerning knowledge and wisdom, which I think looking at today, when you look at governmental systems, like you have your secretaries. Well, and that's actually a good point because we just talked about this the other day. When you look at how the father expected the kingdom to be, he didn't design a kingdom to be relationship focused. He designed the kingdom based on a governmental system.
Mm-hmm.
And you may ask, well, how do y'all know that? Well, if you go back and read the scriptures, even from the old to the new, when when the father destroys everything and rebuilds everything, Messiah rules the earth. He's king of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
David sits on the throne again in the New Jerusalem as a prince,
Yep.
and the father rules everything above that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go back and look at kingdoms, you have ministers of certain divisions within the kingdoms.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at like America today, like America, great example. You have secretary of this, right? Vice president of this, president of this. But when you go and look at the other nations around the world,
Mm-hmm.
they use that phrase pr- prime minister, right? Minister of defense, minister of education, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how a lot of these kingdoms were ran. They had, even though they adopted some of the governorship, type of things, just like we have governors here in America, like you said earlier about how that influence of Babylon is bleeding into the structure of how the Americas are ran, which I thought was very interesting
Yeah.
as well. Um, But with the Hebrew boys, they were very smart too. They knew how to pick their battles, even though they had a lot of anxiety. They knew that, we want to get back to Jerusalem. We know that this is the place for us. We know we can't eat these certain foods or participate in these certain things or bow down and worship Nebuchadnezzar because he is not Elohim.
Mm-hmm.
But because of their faithfulness and their obedience to the Father, they had favor, they had protection. And we all know about the lion's den. We know about the like we know about the furnace. We know about all those things, and we're gonna get to that as well. But they knew their type of. They knew what battles to fight. They knew exactly what to engage and disengage in. And Daniel, with him being the leader of the Hebrew boys, he knew exactly how to move because the Father gave him the wisdom and discernment on how to move. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. They definitely had a lot of favor, and the father made sure that King Nebuchadnezzar saw that he
Hmm.
saw the how well rounded they were in everything, intelligence, common sense, wisdom. He favor made the king take notice of them and give them the favor over his own
Hmm.
people.
Hmm.
Uh, and they just showed how what obedience will get you with the Most High. It will get you into doors. It'll get you into places so He can get the glory.
Hmm.
Because everything that Daniel did, no one else wouldn't be able to do that without a certain type of favor and wisdom. And he was able to show what a prophet, as we all talked about in the last few books, what a prophet of the Most High is able to do, and the type of favor they get,
Hmm.
and they're able to show the dominance of the only living true Elohim.
Hmm.
So in this book, it shows that they stand 10 toes down in what they believe in. That didn't change them because of the influences and the vanity
Hmm.
of where they were.
Hmm. Mm. And if for some of us who know who read this story plenty of times, but to remind you of the Hebrew boys, the king selected them again as his personal servants. The king tried to force them to learn the language of the Chaldeans, to drink uncleansed food, to be drunkers, that sort of thing. And Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, which are the Hebrew boys, they stayed true to their name
Mhm.
no matter what. Even Nebuchadnezzar and his right hand man said, no, part of our culture here, because you guys are now under Babylon, your name is going to be Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Belteshazzar. Right. So
Mhm.
Daniel's name was Belteshazzar, Hananiah was Shadrach, Michelle was Michelle was Meshach, Azariah was Abednego.
Mhm.
Now, it's funny how like we use the term "my government name," right?
Hmm.
And you go back and look at this. It at that time that government that was in charge gave them a government name.
That's
But
right.
the one thing that, like you said earlier about them staying 10 toes down, Daniel 1:8 says, but Daniel made up his mind, and he would not defile himself with the king's choice of food or with wine which he drank. So he sought permission from the commander of the officials that he may not defile himself. So Daniel was respectful. He said, listen, I'm not, I don't want to be disrespectful, or like my daddy used to say, I don't mean no harm, but
Mhm.
I'm not finna eat this food. I'm not finna drink this because I know what it's going to do to me, and it is not how I am supposed to carry myself. Because if my body is the temple,
Mhm.
then why would I want to defile the temple or create an abomination of a desolation because of the way how you guys eat and drink and carry yourselves? Verse 9 says, now Elohim granted Daniel the favor of compassion and insight of the commander of the officials. And the commander of the officials said to Daniel, I'm afraid, my lord, my lord, the king, who has appointed your food and your drink for why he sees in your faces y- looking more haggard than the youths who are your own age, then you may forfeit my head, or may forfeit my head to the king. Basically, take his head off because he thinks that they're going to be malnourished. Verse
Absolutely.
11 says, but Daniel said to the overseers whom commanded the officials that had appointed Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat, water to drink. They knew what they were supposed to eat. They knew how to stay hydrated. And that was, man, I saw something on social media. I don't know what it was. Um, but there was this lady, she's a supposed prophetess or whatever, right? And you know how I feel about that, but we'll talk about that
Mhm.
later on. But she was talking about supposedly that she made a big deal about people doing the Daniel fast. She was saying that Daniel didn't fast when it came to eating fruits and vegetables. And she was like, y'all don't read your Bible because Daniel never fasted. I'm like, wait, what? Why would he not? When you decide to take yourself away from things that you know do harm to your body and focus on something that you know will purify your body and satisfy your body, then that you know this is a righteous thing to do. And it to me it blew my mind when I heard that. I'm like, how do you have all these followers but you're talking madness? It makes no sense.
It's the thing of people are really moving without not using their own brains and common sense to understand what fasting is. There's different types of fastings on different levels. Um, the fact that he chose to do a diet of what the scriptures call pulse, which is
Hmm.
said vegetables, wheat, barley, grains, water, fruits, things like that. That is fasting from the norm.
Right.
That is different from the norm, and it is looked at as something. That's why was it the general,
The right hand man.
the right hand man? That's why he was so afraid of them looking malnourished that the king would notice a difference
Right.
between those four and the other children, and it will be a problem. But when people when you're reading, you have to read with understanding, reading comprehension. You have to be able to use your common sense also with the scriptures. You have to use your mind, and you got to use the common sense that the Father gave us because He gave us that.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
we have to understand how to read with understanding and be able to discern why would if this is a real life situation. If I know what fasting really means, it doesn't mean just cut off everything. It doesn't mean that.
Right.
I'm going to use my common sense to put myself in that place to try to at least figure it out and try to get some understanding. And that's why everybody is so lost because we're our people are really followers of like sheep, and we're sheep to an extent, but we have to. But the scriptures tell us to study. It tells us
Hmm.
to have understanding and to use wisdom. So we have to take those types of things into consideration when someone is teaching us and when we're learning on our own. So
Hmm.
that's crazy.
It is crazy. But and one thing with Daniel, after he proved them wrong because again, having the father's favor over them, they did it
Mhm.
for 10 days. They stuck with the water. They stuck with the vegetables, and it blew their minds. They were like, "Man, you guys look even better than before.
Even
You look well nourished and more youthful than anything."
mhm, favor.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you. So you know. um So then, as we continue to go through, um, we see that the Babylonians were just impressed
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't realize that these four Hebrew boys had
Mm-hmm.
there was a difference in covering, or a difference of identity within them, because when they said what they said, they knew in confidence that no matter what the Chaldeans or what the Babylonians said about what's best for you, they knew what was best for them because of what the Father promised them.
Absolutely.
So, and then we go into chapter two. Now, chapter two now, whoa, chapter
My,
two, now you good, bro. Chapter two talks about the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had.
mm-hmm.
And Nebuchadnezzar had a very disturbing dream. And none of the Chaldeans, or none of his sorcerers, or none of those folks were able to interpret what his dream was. And at that time, um, Nebuchadnezzar put so much faith in those false prophets, his oracles, his supposedly wise men. But in that dream, whatever it was, it scared the mess out of him. And he wanted to test to see who truly had power, to truly understand someone that he could trust, to see who's going to tell me the truth about what kind of dream that I had.
Absolutely.
And another thing I find very interesting too, when people go to some of these prophetic meetings and conferences and all this other stuff, and how people get exposed and said that you had a dream of this, that, and the third,
Mm-hmm.
and completely off. You know, it it it, it honestly kind of makes people that call themselves overseers of the word, and people are actually doing the work of the Father. It kind of makes all of us look bad, because the people have been exposed to liars and deceitful people, just like what Nebuchadnezzar dealt with the sorcerers and the enchanters. Like they couldn't tell him what the dream was, because they were not truly powerful enough to do that.
Absolutely.
So when you read that chapter about the the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had,
Mm-hmm.
overall, how what would you have done? Like, if you were put under that amount of pressure, and
Mm-hmm.
somebody asked you, something's bothering me, and I don't, it's something in my heart and my mind, I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help me understand what this dream means? Right? Because some people, when you tell them a dream,
Mm-hmm.
they automatically think they know what the interpretation is. But nine times out of ten, just based off me telling you what it is, what the dream is, you think
Mm-hmm.
you have a message behind it, but do you really know what that dream meant? Because I may tell you that it means something, but for it may not be for my edification or my gratification. It could be for someone else.
Right. Absolutely. So the
But then,
question.
yeah,
Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Now, so the question is, like, have you ever been in a situation like that, where someone that had a dream, or something, and they told you what the dream was, and they needed confirmation? Like, have you ever been in a situation to where you had a dream and you told somebody something, or have you ever, or someone told you a dream and you were able to decipher what that dream was?
I've been on both ends of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. I've been in a situation where I had dreams, and I guess it bothered me, and I went to someone that I know to have discernment, just to get their take on it, to get their take. I've done that before. I've had People definitely come to me and tell me about a situation or a dream or something like that. And, uh, my thing is always to be slow to speak,
Hmm.
you know, listen clearly, but be slow to speak. And there are times when I speak, I will get the word, I will get a word from what they're telling me. Hasn't been all the time, hasn't been a lot, but I've had situations to where I was able to give the person some insight
Hmm.
uh, on it, and also at the same time to let them know that you know being in prayer and having that one-on-one connection with the Most High, if you seek it, if you seek it, what you're looking for, if you seek it out, He will reveal it to you.
Hmm.
He will reveal it to you. Uh, so at the end of the day, you know, one thing about giving, I guess you could say, more of a wise counsel when it comes to that, because you really don't see too many in this day and time where people are getting prophetic dreams like that a whole lot.
Hmm.
And you know, my thing is I've never spoken unless I knew I was given a word to give them for that.
Right.
You know, that's what kind of separates false prophecy from the word that is given from the Most High to give that person.
Hmm.
So it's one of those it's one of those slippery slopes that I think if we want to talk about in today's time with this is being misused a lot
Hmm.
because everybody's not getting the word. Everybody's not meant to get a prophetic word. Everybody's not meant to get dreams and visions.
Hmm.
It didn't say everybody. The scripture didn't say everybody, but He will give it to who He gives it to
Hmm.
at any appointed time. And sometimes you will be put in a position, and it's because you've been chosen to be put in that position.
Hmm.
So, but in this case with Daniel, when he received over the king to receive that dream, and it was meant for his people not to be able to give it to him
Right.
because they did not represent Yah. They did not represent him. He needed to show his power, and he was the only true living Elohim. So it
Hmm.
had to come from his chosen prophet. It had to.
Yeah.
This was to prove a point. This was to prove dominance in the land, because when you're dealing with folks that do false idol worship, he has to show and prove with one of his prophets.
Hmm.
This is a situation where it had to be done this way. He had to use one of his to bring it home that
Right.
I am the one you are to be obedient to. You have this kingdom because of me. If you want to stay in this kingdom, you will be obedient and not be in arrogance. But we know how this turned out for the king.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I tell you, it wasn't pretty. To be
No.
honest with you, it wasn't pretty, and unfortunately, because of poor choices, it cost him. And then when you go back and when you go back to the text, the Nebuchadnezzar's right hand man
Mhm.
knew that um, the Nebuchadnezzar's chosen prophets or oracles or whatever couldn't couldn't they couldn't figure out what the dream was. I mean,
Mhm.
that was just a given. So what the what the Babylonian right hand man that was appointed to Nebuchadnezzar said, you know what? I know about these Hebrew boys. I know they can get it done.
Mm-hmm.
because I've seen what they survived, with just this fast, and the Elohim that they serve is powerful. So because the Elohim that they serve is powerful, and they have all wisdom and discernment, this actually may be the folks that we need to talk to now. And so they were summoned to go up to the king's residence and to interpretate the dream.
Absolutely.
And when he started doing that, he realized that his neck was on the line if Daniel couldn't do it. Like if Daniel couldn't decipher what that dream was, oh, forget about it. You in trouble.
It was over.
It was over. So if, I want to bring this to your attention too.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel chapter 2 verse 28 says, however, there is a Elohim in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will take place in the latter days. So what we're about to talk about is the dream that Nebuchadnezzar received from the Father.
Mm-hmm.
And when people, and I want people to understand when it comes to prophecy that was written before our existence, right? And when I mean by our existence, before we were here on this earth, you're going to always notice that when prophecy has yet to be fulfilled, you're always going to see towards the end of the statement of the scripture in the latter days. You're going to always see that. So to let you know that this has not been fulfilled yet.
Mm-hmm.
This was a dream. This was your dream and the visions in your mind while on your bed, is what Daniel was telling him. And if you jump down to verse 31 through 34, it talks about what the dream was.
Mm-hmm.
Can you read verse 31 through 35 for me? If you don't
Sure.
mind?
Yeah. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breasts and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet, and were of iron and clay, and break them to pieces. Okay, go on.
Yeah, verse 35.
Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, and the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer, threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth.
So when Nebuchadnezzar had this dream and Daniel interpreted, he had a vision or a dream of nations, right? Of different kingdoms. When you look at what each part of that statue represents, the gold, the bronze, the iron, the clay, etc., the
Mhm.
silver, like all those things, all those reflect the different kingdoms at that time. And when you saw that, the first kingdom that was referenced to gold was Babylon,
Mhm.
because he was the beginning. He was the beginning of the dominance after the captivity of the people.
Right.
Verse 36 says, "This was a dream. Now we will tell its interpretation before the king. O king, you are the king of kings, to whom Elohim of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the strength, and the glory. And wherever the sons of men dwell, or the beasts of the field, or the birds of the sky, he has given them into your hand and has caused you to rule over them. You are the head of gold." So when Daniel speaks on this, because the children of Israel, both the northern kingdom, southern kingdom, because of their ways,
Mm-hmm.
the father had to use Babylon to get them in line, to get them in order, and gave Nebuchadnezzar the authority to rule over them. So Babylon sat at the top of the statue.
Mm-hmm.
So then the second part of this is the Middle Persia and Greece Empire, right? They were all coming around that time after Babylon. Verse
Mm-hmm.
39 says, after you, there will arise another kingdom inferior to you, then another third kingdom of bronze, which will rule over all the earth. So when you look at Medo-Persia, that's where the Assyrians and all those folks, that's where they come from. They came and took over.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at Greece, Greece came in and they ruled everything. That's when you start to have a lot of the medieval times when you hear about Zeus and like characters like Hercules, Aphrodite, and like all those things,
Right.
right? That's when the Greek language came into place. When you think of New Testament writings and the Septuagint and all those things, the only way they were able to create the Septuagint in Hebrew, part of the Hebrew speaking people
Mm-hmm.
were under captivity of the Greek kingdom. So they translated things that were said into Greek. So when the Septuagint was created, I believe that back then that's where the Old Testament for Greek came into play. But the fourth kingdom, and we talked about this earlier, not that long ago, was Rome.
Mm-hmm.
Rome has so much influence on the world. Rome began a revolution, not only in religion, but lifestyle in general. Paganism beyond what we see today, or paganism beyond what they saw back then, was worse under the Greeks and the Romans.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at how the history of the church started, when you look at the fraternities that some of your friends, cousins, relatives, all that began, that platform or that template began back then.
Mm-hmm.
And Satan himself indulged in all of that because he was a ruler of those kingdoms. But Rome was special because Rome never died. It's still in effect till the day.
Yep.
And when you go and read verse 40 for me, if you don't mind.
And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise.
Go ahead, verse 41.
And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided,
Mm.
but there shall be in it of strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay.
And so hold on right there. So if you go back and read middle way of that scripture,
Mhm.
it will be a divided kingdom. You go and look at countries today that are influenced based off Roman platforms and the way of Roman governing, right? Go look at the Vatican. Great example. Great example, right? The Roman Catholic Church and organizations like that were built based off this type of structure.
Mhm.
Verse 42 says, as the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly of potters of the pottery, so sorry. So some of the kingdom will be strong, and part of it will be brittle. So some of those nations and some of those governments will be weakened than the others, right?
Hmm.
And in that you saw iron mixed with common clay. They will be combined with one another in seed of man, but they will not adhere to one another, even as iron does not combine with pottery. So after, and then we're gonna fast forward all the way to verse 46 through 49. Daniel explains the divine kingdom. He talks about how the kingdom that the Father creates will never be destroyed, no matter what your earthly kingdoms may be presented at that specific time. They
Hmm.
can be destroyed and they will be destroyed, but the divine kingdom will never be destroyed.
Absolutely.
So know that and understand that. So when he interpret that, Nebuchadnezzar was like, "Hey man, that's my dude. I'm about to promote him. Yo, you chief prophet right now."
Hmm.
He made the Hebrew boys governors, like he gave them power and authority over all of Babylon.
Yep.
And man, there was beef. There was beef with that, and they hated it. And they hated it.
You did.
So then in chapter 3 talked about the golden image. So it was the image that Daniel prophesied about, or interpreted the dream based off of. Nebuchadnezzar built a statue, a
Hmm.
gold statue of himself. And Nebuchadnezzar was very arrogant. He was very narcissistic. He was one of these guys that, he would listen. He would take advice of those who are wise. Some may even call him a wise guy, right? Kind of like a New Yorker-ish type of personality, right?
Hmm.
Let me just leave that there. But when he built that statue, he made a decree and told everybody had to worship that statue.
Hmm.
And I find something very interesting. I find something interesting today. There is a video going around on the internet about Gaza and the redevelopment of Gaza that President Trump put out there. So if you ever get a chance, if you have not seen it, go out there and look at that video of plans for Gaza in the next 5 years. Right? Everybody knows that Gaza right now it is just a barren land, like it's just destroyed. It's horrible. But there's plans now to come in and actually rebuild Gaza and turning it into a paradise. And if you look at that video, you see a gold statue of something very interesting, and we'll leave it at that. But this is when we talked about being 10 toes down. The Hebrew boys, they said to themselves, "I'm not worshiping this idol, this statue, because it's not what we're supposed to do. The only one that we worship, the only one that we give praise, honor, and glory to is the God of the Hebrews."
Hmm.
And of course, snitching get stitches, right? So
Hmm.
Nebuchadnezzar's people turned right around and said, "Hey, they're not worshiping you like they're supposed to. You gave a law and you said that people in the kingdom of Babylon need to worship everybody of this great statue of yours." And Nebuchadnezzar was mad. He was mad. He was hot.
He seems to
So,
forget. He seems to forget a lot about. Well, he seemed to have forgotten where the interpretation of the dream came from, and that's where the arrogance comes from. Uh, it reminds you of the arrogance of Pharaoh.
yep.
You can see it with your own eyes. You can hear it. You can smell it. You can taste it. But none of that matters because of your own arrogance and pride. You'll just forget that it ever existed, and you still think you the man.
Hmm.
And jealousy at its highest form against the young man.
Yep. So when when Nebuchadnezzar found out that they didn't do it, man, he said, I've got to put him in a furnace. I gotta let him burn
Mm-hmm.
because that was his law. They it said that he had to heat that furnace 7 times seven its normal heat
It's hot.
beyond. But the one thing that stood out that was very interesting was verse 22 of chapter 3. And it says, for this reason, because the king's command was urgent, and the furnace had been extremely hot, the flame of the fire slew those men who carried Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Hold them up, let them have it. Verse 23. But these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire, still tied up. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astounded and stood up in haste. He said to his high officials, was it not three men we casted bound into the midst of the fire? They replied to the king, certainly, O king. Pay attention to this. Verse 25. He said, look, I see four men loosened, walking about in the midst of the fire without harm. In appearance of the fourth was like the son of the gods. Verse 26. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the furnace of blazing fire, responded and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out, you servants of the Most High God, and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the midst of the fire. Mm, mm. All the officials gathered around and saw, in regard to these men, that the fire had no effect on their bodies. For these men, nor their hair on their head singed off, nor their trousers damaged, nor the smell of fire came upon them. Nebuchadnezzar responded and said, blessed be Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who put their trust in him, violating the king's command, and yield up their bodies, so as not to serve and worship any god except their own Elohim. Therefore, I decree that any people, nation, or tongue that speaks anything offensive against the Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses reduced to rubbish reap, inasmuch as there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way. Then the king called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to prosper in the province of Babylon. That shows you your creator, his power and his authority when he sends his divine from heaven down to protect you. The fire that you may face here on earth means nothing because guess what? That spirit that the Father sends to you gives you the protection.
Only because of your loyalty. It's because of their loyalty to him and them standing for him through being cooked.
Mm,
They were under the covering and protection. It'd have been different if they would have just gave in.
hmm.
It's a big difference.
Big difference. Then in chapter 4, uh, Nebuchadnezzar has a what they say a come to Jesus meeting, right? He realizes how powerful our Father in heaven really is. And if you continue to go through the chapter, there's a lot of things that Daniel yet again puts Belteshazzar, now I guess he's ruling, because Nebuchadnezzar decided to lose his mind.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, what happens when you get out of line.
Yeah.
Belteshazzar came in and was ruling in Babylon at the time. And again, Daniel had more beef. He had beef with Belteshazzar's folks, with the Chaldeans. It's something about the Chaldeans, man. And the Babylonians, they didn't like Daniel because he told the truth. He told them what it was. He told her what it was. So then there was another situation where Daniel had to do another interpretation. And because of that interpretation, next thing you know, the vision came fulfilled. It was a humbling vision. It changed the ways of how one person may become arrogant. Nebuchadnezzar was arrogant, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was so bad that his son Belteshazzar had to rule the kingdom because they thought Nebuchadnezzar went mad. Like he was just a beast of the field, right? His toenails looked like claws.
He's a
Hair about
beast.
as long. Man, what?
Turned to a
What?
beast. Turned into a beast.
Man. And he was out there for about 12 months. He was out there for about 12 months, about a year out there, looking like a crazy, looking like a crazy baboon. But at the end of the day, it had I appreciate when Daniel was interpreting this vision, because what it does for us in today's time, when you read what Nebuchadnezzar went through, Nebuchadnezzar had everything, but because he disobeyed the creator of all things and thought himself to be higher than
Mm-hmm.
he had to humble him.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that long after Daniel had that interpretation of that vision. Again, it was probably maybe a year or so later, and then he's out in the field thinking he's a wild beast. That's how quick the Father can work. He may give you time. He gave Nebuchadnezzar time to get it right, but Nebuchadnezzar was like, "Nah, I'm gonna continue to do what I do." All right, well, let's see.
That's
We'll
it.
see.
And that's
He
still,
humbled him
and
real
that's
fast.
how you can recognize a prophet.
Yep.
It came to pass. And
Yep.
you said his son came into power, even his son, he reaped the same, he reaped the even worse fate of inheriting the arrogance of his father.
Mm.
So that's the definition of a generational curse. If you have listened to anything we said the past few episodes, this is what a generational curse is.
Mm.
Your iniquity
Hmm.
passing on and your offspring inheriting and accepting that same iniquity. That's how it works.
Well, while you mention that, and then we roll into chapter 5. Chapter 5 talks about that feast. And if you remember that feast, um, it was a time where this was right before the Medo-Persians came in and took over. And at that time, the Babylonian government, kingdom, their leadership, they thought that they were indestructible. They thought that because of their success for so long that they couldn't be touched. Little did they know that their adversaries, the ones that's about to take over them, were outside their walls and they didn't even realize it because they were unprepared. See, your enemy will creep up on you if you're not prepared. If you walking around here with this thought in your head that you are unbeatable,
Mm.
that you take credit for your victories, saying I did this, I did that, blah blah blah. not acknowledging the one who gave you the capacity to do it or capability to do it. Yeah, okay. If you sit here and say, hey, I built these businesses on my own, I brought all this in on my own,
Mm, mm,
it'll humble you real quick.
fast.
And so what they what they realized was Belshazzar realized that because of his idolatrous ways, his adulterous ways, his fornicating ways, his arrogance, it cost him.
Mm-hmm.
So when they were sitting there, having a party and everything else, they were being very disrespectful by taking the gold and silver dishes and was drinking wine out of them. They came out of the temple,
Mm-hmm.
and it cost them, right? So when they
Yep.
were sitting there partying, guess what happens? All of a sudden, they see this writing that popped up on the wall.
Mm,
And that writing that popped up on the wall says, Mene, Mene, Tekel, uprising. Mene means Elohim has numbered your kingdom and will put an end to it. Tekel means you have been weighed on the scales and found deficient. For these, your kingdom has been divided and given over to the Medes and the Persians, and they right down the street waiting.
mm,
Verse 29 of that says, and then Belshazzar gave orders, and they clothed Daniel with purple and gold around his neck and issued proclamation concerning him that he now had the authority and third ruler in the kingdom. By the time he did all that, it was too late.
too late. Too late. And Daniel said he didn't want none of that anyway.
He ain't
So,
want none of that.
too late.
So after that, they came in, ransacked the entire kingdom, took them all out, turned them slaves, beat them down, killed some of them at the whole 9 yards. It was bad. And then Daniel served under Darius, the Medo-Persian king. And again, because Daniel was faithful and he said that I'm not going to comply with what you want me to do. And I will say this about Darius. Darius respected Daniel.
Mm-hmm. Very much.
He grew fond of Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the character of Daniel, Daniel was a very highly respected man. And once he proved himself, then people trusted him. So again, with him having them haters, they snitched on him again. Darius made a decree and said, hey, this is what it's going to be. You're going to praise and worship me at this time. Daniel's like, I can't do that, Father, because I'm going to exalt your name above all. And where Daniel was, his quarters, he could see Jerusalem from where he was, and he cried out and said, Father, he wants to go back home. And because Darius's snitches came and saw Daniel praying to our Father in heaven, they enforced the decree because they said, even the king said, I can't even go back on my own decree. And the henchmen went back and said, you can't go back on your own decree, or what kind of king are you? And so Darius was like, you know what? I gotta do it. And he threw him in the
So,
lion's den. Threw him in the lion's den. Had same protection he had in the furnace. He still had the same protection in the lion's den. So no
absolutely.
matter, no matter what situation, your situation is your lion's den, no matter what that is. As long as you have the Father in you, you will survive that lion's den.
Mm-hmm.
It could be two or three lions in there, four lions in there. And those lions could represent something. debt, marriage, job, kids, whatever the circumstances is, when you belong to Him, those situations will not have a drastic impact on you. You're gonna feel a little bit of the heat. Now you gonna feel something, but it's not going to completely destroy you. Why? Because He has your best interest. But if you become narcissistic, arrogant, all about you, and disobedient, then you're gonna get ate up by them lions.
Absolutely.
You're gonna get ate up by them lions. So, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Obedience is everything, and favor will take you a long way with the Most High.
Hmm.
With obedience, favor is the equation. You're gonna have favor every time because
Yep.
his word will never return void to us in any way, and he will give your enemies. Your enemies will be your footstool, and you will get favor from your enemies, as Daniel did with King Darius. King
Hmm.
Darius was sick to his stomach that he had to put Daniel in the lion's den, and he couldn't break his own law.
Yep.
So the fact that that kind of favor and love shows that the Most High is involved. And what it says is that he was, when he found out Daniel was alive, he was overjoyed.
Hmm.
That's favor.
Yep.
That's favor. They're not the same. They are not the same. They don't. They don't follow the same creed. They don't follow the same laws. But to have your enemies turn into something to benefit you, that's nothing but favor
All day.
all day.
All day. Well, we're gonna wrap this up. Next week we're gonna go a little bit. We're gonna go a little bit detail. We've got Daniel chapter 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So um, as we are in these last days, I want you to prepare your mind, not of fear, but in preparation of what's to come. If you go back and read what the prophets said prior to Daniel, we know that the Father, every time there was some type of correction, if there was some type of judgment that came to pass, there's always restoration in the end. So we're going to get in deep into the eschatology known as the study of end times, because the books that we're coming up now, even though last year we touched on it, but the events that are taking place now align with the scriptures like none other. Even though we talked about Ezekiel chapter 36, 37, 38, 39, those are precursors to a latter prophecy later down the road, but at least you're made aware of what's going to take place, right?
Right.
So we will uh we will touch base on that, and I'm gonna always say keep your eye on the Middle East. Research the third temple, research the red heifers or the four cows that were sent from America to the state of Israel. I think it was 2022 or 2023. Understand the requirements of why that third temple is being built. Pay attention to the things that are taking place between the worlds. And again, if you don't watch the news, I don't blame you. We don't watch the news either. But just be watchmen and women of the events that are happening.
Mhm.
Keep your Bibles close to you at all times and go back and read over these scriptures when it comes to certain things we point out about end times prophecy. And you'll see how a lot of these things are lining up. You'll see some of the people that that especially when we start talking about the Antichrist, you'll be able to read that and see the characteristics of the Antichrist and say, okay, this person has this same characteristic, but they are not the Antichrist. You'll see characteristics of the false prophet, which would be the leader of religion, right? When you understand how religion will control the masses, it will have a bigger impact on the Christian church because Christianity is the biggest religion in the world today. It even surpassed Islam, I think, by what, another 5 million or something like that.
Mhm.
And then Islam behind that, and then everything else. So pay attention, not indulge yourself into the news, but pay attention to the events that are taking place. Take your Bibles, cross reference that. It'll open your eyes and make you realize these end times are happening faster than we can expect. Why? Because our Messiah is returning. Amen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You want to close it out, bro?
Yep. Uh, we definitely thank you all for joining and tuning in. Hopefully, this has been a blessing and some edification has been manifested with this teaching. Uh, Anytime we can get edification from the Father, our duty and job is to give it as it is given to us, and to decrease and allow Him to increase in all the teachings. So, just definitely keep your eyes and your ears open and allow the Ruach to lead you and not you lead yourself. So you can have the understanding and you can give the wisdom that He gives freely to us all. Just use it. Everything you have for right now, use everything you have to your advantage to be able to stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
Mm.
So this is another Shabbat that was blessed. Uh, Definitely, we will definitely be dealing with the rest of Daniel next Shabbat. And definitely just tune in, share these teachings. Uh, let's chew the meat, spit out the bone, however you want to do it. But as long as you're retaining some truth and some understanding, get to studying on your own so you can receive the blessings and receive the understanding you need for yourself and your house. So definitely follow us, uh, Kingdom KDH Ministries / Kingdom Venture Show on Facebook. Become a family member. Comment, like, view some of the videos, share it. Start some conversations. We need to have everyone's opinion. Everybody's voice matters when it comes to the spiritual walk. Because what one person doesn't have, another person does. So we can all put it all together. Uh, Up here on YouTube, Kingdom Venture Show. Definitely subscribe and share it to as many people as you can. This is just about learning and all of us learning, iron sharpening iron. That's all it's about. No one above anyone. The person that's above is the Most High.
All right.
His son Yahushua Hamashiach. That is who we look to. That is who we serve, and that's that. No questions asked on that. And kdhministries.org. Come check us out. Definitely, uh, as my brother always says, we try now. It's starting to get a little bit warmer, a little more nice outside. We're going to be having more things outside. Uh, Definitely, we can all. Hopefully, a lot of us can get together and break bread and just be able to just be there for one another in the spirit. And
Mhm.
just because all we got, whether we want to believe it and whether we want to understand it, we're all we have. So we have to stay locked into one another.
Yep. All right. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Dot, that's crazy. All right, cool.